For coming. Thank you, Rav Avi, always for arranging, organizing, sponsoring. Parshas Vayetze is so packed, and there's so many things that I'm interested in learning together. But I want to focus on a specific point. We'll have Shabbos Kodesh. We'll have yet opportunity to discuss other things together. I want to focus on a specific. Daniel's here. Daniel, I want to focus on a specific Rashi. It's very exclusive. There's so much here to see. I want to zone in, Daniel, on a specific Rashi. Yaakov Avinu, Kashara Yaakov es Rachel. Yaakov Avinu sees Rachel Imenu. The pasuk says, "Vayishak Yaakov leRachel, Vayises Koilei Vayevk." In his first meeting already with Rachel Imenu, so it says Vayevk, Yaakov Avinu cries. And Rashi's bothered by what's the Bechiyah? It's a happy moment. What's the Bechiyah? What's the Vayevk? So Rashi says two pshatim. The first pshat we won't focus on tonight. The first part Rashi says, Levishat Safa Beruach HaKodesh. Yaakov Avinu saw with Ruach HaKodesh she'enai nichneses imay l'kfura, that he's not going to be buried. He's not nichneses imay l'kfura. She's not going to be buried next to him. The Indian of kfura, and to be nikvar, I still want to say that as we get older, young people live very, very present. I'll meet a bacher to interview for the yeshiva, and I'll say, if I say to the bacher, we'll take you in 6 months, Pesach's man, you'll come. To the bacher, you've done nothing to him. Pesach doesn't exist. What am I doing now? To the parents, as we get older, longer periods of time, longer periods of time matter as you get older. When you're younger, today and now, you know what I mean, Menachem? As people get older, to the parents, when I say Pesach, he'll come next year. Baruch Hashem, okay. What we'll do now, next year he'll come. To a youngster, there's no... Yaakov Avinu's long view, he just meets Rachel Imenu, and the view of the tzaddik, the eternal view of the tzaddik, that he's beiche, that he's not nechneses, that she's not going to be nechneses imay l'kfura. The long, the eternal view of the tzaddik. The past, the body, the past, the physical. She's not going to be nechneses imay l'kfura. He sees in her that she's not coming l'kfura. The view and the long and lengthy view of the tzaddik is remarkable to me, but I want to learn the davar acher of Rashi. Says Rashi, why did Yaakov Avinu cry upon seeing Rachel Imenu? He cried because he was empty-handed. That's Vayevk. He cried that he was empty-handed. Amar, he said, Eliezer, Eved Avi Abba. Eliezer, the Eved of my Zayda. Avram Avinu's Eved Eliezer. Hayu biyadav nizamim v'tzmidim v'mikdanos. He had all these gifts. When he came to be Mekadesh Rivka Imenu, he came with gifts. Vani ein biyadi klum. And he says, I'm coming empty-handed. And Vayevk, he cried that he was empty-handed, that he couldn't give and support Rachel Imenu. And he cried, he said, the Eved of Avi Abba, my Zayda's Eved, came with so many gifts. And ein biyadi klum, I have nothing to give Rachel Imenu. Vayevk, it was a source of bechiyah that he had nothing to give. Rachel Imenu was a source of bechiyah that he couldn't give her. He wanted to give Vayevk. There was a bechiyah that he couldn't give her mikdanos and gifts. Vayevk, he cried. What's the Maisa? Why does he have nothing to give? What's the pshat? Levisha radaf Eliphaz ben Esav b'mitzvahs aviv. Achrav lahargay. Eliphaz, the son of Esav, ran after Yaakov Avinu to kill Yaakov Avinu. B'mitzvahs aviv, his tata Esav was mitzvah Eliphaz, commanded Eliphaz, go kill Yaakov Avinu. V'sigay, and Eliphaz catches up to Yaakov Avinu. So now he catches up to Yaakov Avinu, ready to kill Yaakov Avinu. Since Eliphaz grew up in the lap of Yitzchak Avinu, Mashach Yadai, there was a Kedusha to him. He grew up in the lap of his Zayda. There was a Kedusha to him. Mashach Yadai, couldn't do it. There was Kedusha. There was sparks from Yitzchak Avinu. He grew up b'cheikei shel Yitzchak. So Mashach Yadai, Pashut, couldn't kill Yaakov Avinu. Amalei ma esel litzivi shalaba. This Chazal always is remarkable to me. He asked Yaakov Avinu, he like a lumdus, what should I do? But the Tatas given mitzvah. What do I do to my father's command? Amazing Rashi. Amazing Chazal. What should I do? Is this a halachic matter? What should I do? My father told me to kill you. What's as remarkable as Eliphaz is like Shaila. Daniel, you hear like his halachic Shaila. What should I do? My father told me to kill you. Was this a halachic Shaila or was like an Eitzah? Was he scared of that? It could be he's scared. What should I do? B'tzivi shalav. He's not asking halacha. He's asking, what should I do? My father's going to patch me. I'm going to get punished. Yaakov answers a halachic answer. Ani tomash biyadi, steal what I have, take every penny I own. Va'ani chashiv kemes. If he's asking Reb Moshe halachic shayla, so the pshat is Esav dachashita. Esav has a shita. Esav holds that Yaakov Avinu is a ganav. He holds la halacha, he's supposed to kill him. And Eliphaz says, I have a tzivui. It's not an aveira. Their shita wasn't an aveira. And Yaakov answers l'shitasa. I don't know if it was halachic shayla. I don't know. It makes me laugh, the shayla. What should I do for the tzivui shalavi? And what's more remarkable is Yaakov answers. Now it's hard for me to say he was afraid of Esav. Ma'esel l'tzivui, the tzivui shalaba. He doesn't say ma'esel la'abba. He's not worried about tata. He's worried about the tzivui of Abba. The mashmais is he should say, what should I do about my father? He's not worried about his father, he's worried about the tzivui of the tata. He has a tzivui, and l'shitas Esav, that wasn't wrong. Scary, but l'shitas, and Yaakov Avinu says, okay, you're going l'shitas, you have your tata, you're going with his base medrash, quote unquote. So he says, take tomash biyadi, clean me out, take all my money. And we know an ani is chashiv kemeis, Gemara Nedarim, Chazal, an ani is considered like a dead person. So he says, take all my money. Rabbi say, Maish, why is an ani? What I want to learn together this Thursday night, Leil Shishi, Parshas Vayetze, Yitzchak, why is an ani called a mes? Ani chashiv kemes. What's that? So I want to learn a Maral. The Maral on the spot, on this pasuk in Gur Aryeh, says a pshat, why an ani is chashiv kemes. It's a sugya I'm thinking a lot about these days. It's very relevant to Yaakov Avinu. Very relevant to Yaakov Avinu. It's very relevant to Galus. Yaakov is the Av of Galus. And the Av who sends us off, who sends all of Klal Yisrael, he's the final Av. The sugya of Galus we study through Yaakov Avinu. And there's an inyan that a person has to take with him all his life, no matter where we are. And this inyan I want to share with the Chevra. Why is an ani, and it's everything in the Torah is exact, that Yaakov Avinu taught ani chashiv kemes, that Yaakov Avinu taught it. His vayevk, Yaakov cries that he doesn't have what to give Rachel Imenu, and he's the one who told Eliphaz to clean him out, because he said, your father said, kill me, you yaitze, you stole all my money, ani chashiv kemes. What's the inyan that ani is chashiv kemes? Says the Maral that a Mayan, it's interesting, it's always a shailan being toivel in different lakes. I remember in camp by us, there was a guy who was a scuba diver, and my father asked him, they wanted to know, was a lake a kosher or mikveh? So my father asked the scuba diver that to go deep underneath and see, is it a Mayan? Is there water, underground water springs there, that it draws its water from itself? Or is it just a hole in the ground that water is brought in? And if it's a mayin, obviously it's easier to be. It's easier to be. It could be a mikveh easier if it's a mayin. And my father asked the scuba diver. I remember to check. Says the Maharal, a mayin, which means that it gets water from Zichalein from itself, is called what? A mayin chayim. It's called a mayin chayim. A mayin gets water. Any water body that draws water from underground springs is called a mayin chayim. Why is it called a mayin chayim? Says the Maharal that an ani is chashuv kemes because he needs somebody else for his chiyus. And oibazoi for himself, he's dead. Chiyus is when you get chiyus from zechalein, from yourself. To be alive is to have life from yourself. A mayin, which is a water body that gets water from itself, is called chayim. A mayin chayim, because that's called chayim. It's alive. And when you can't get from zechalein, when in your own eyes you don't have, you only have that he sees you have, you only have that he sees you have, that's called mace, that's called dead. The West is struggling, the Western culture is struggling, nair on this point, that I only have if Yana sees I have. I only have that you see I have, that's called mace. Ani is chashiv kemes. Chayim is when a person has chayim from themselves, from within. It's not needing him to see. It's not needing them to notice. It's not needing their approval. It's from myself alone, from within. From within, that's called chayim. And the ani who needs to come on to somebody else, chashiv kemes. Says the Maharal, that's pshat sayni matanas yichya. Somebody who hates gifts, he'll have chiyus, that's chiyus. He's not looking to the other person's things. From zichalein, from himself, from the person themselves. In the world, there's something called trauma bands. I've seen this. The world, there's something called trauma bands. What's a trauma band? It needs a little hesber, but I want to bring out a point. What's trauma bands? So let's start that a trauma somebody goes through, just quickly to get to the point, a trauma somebody goes through is not something that happened to a person. Traumas doesn't happen. Somebody goes through something terrible. In the sugyas we're talking, that's not trauma. Trauma is not what happened to the person. Trauma is not from without, it's from within. It's what the person learned from what happened. They go through something and they feel insignificant. Somebody beat them up. Something difficult happened in youth. What happened is not the trauma, what they learned. Trauma is the past. Trauma was. The trauma we're talking about is. The person feels chasar, feels invisible, feels unimportant. Trauma bands is two people meet, maybe a boy meets a young lady, and he doesn't have a value for himself. He doesn't value himself. And his only value is she likes me. She looks at him, her only value is he likes me. They get very close very fast. I've seen it. I've seen two people who don't have a value for themselves. They've been through hardships. They may have felt invisible. And somebody noticed me, so the bond is amazingly close. Because I exist because you notice me. And they get very close very fast. But I have seen, chas v'shalom, if the band ends, it's like the person mamish died. Mamish. Kipshutai mamish. A parent asks, like, what's he getting so excited? I knew you shouldn't have spoken to her to begin with. He shouldn't have spoken to her. But you understand that your son died. He only existed, she noticed him. Your son just died. Parents wonder on relationships sometimes. What is she doing? What's he doing? He only exists because she noticed him. She only exists. So make sure they get a chiyus from zichalein. If you ever noticed in the Sheva Brachas, in Sheva Brachas we say on the Chasna and Kala, the Sheva Brachas, so the bracha, the second to last, the sixth bracha, we say Hashem is misameya chasan v'kala. Afterwards, we say Misameach Chosn im Akala. First, they each have to be. There's a Hashem's Misameach Chosn Alein, Akala Alein. Then it could be, and then and only Misameach Chosn im Akala. A person from within. From within is a person. From within, the person has to be a person. When the person's a person from within, the person, the mensch is a mensch von sich allein. And then she's a person from her alone. Each one is a person from their own. This is the mid that says Vayivasar Yaakov Levadai later on. Yaakov remains Levadai, and there's a midah called Levadai. It's a midah to work on a person as a value from themselves, not in the eyes, not how it appears to others, not only through the validation from oneself alone, from oneself, the person and Hashem, not coming on to another. That's the chayus. That's the chayus of a mensch, that it's not. He's not a person who needs the other person in order to exist and in order to be. They have a chiyus from themselves. A levada, a midah vayavasa Yaakov levada, is a midah that all of us have to acquire. We're in a society that's struggling with the sense of levada, the value of the person themselves. There's a tremendous dagish. It doesn't happen if others don't see it happened. It doesn't happen if others, if I can't say over my story, if they're not likes on it, that it happened. And this is a society, we have to, with ourselves, with our mishpachas, you have a value for yourself. The job as we raise our children is to give a strong sense of the value of the mensch, the value of the person. Each person has a value. They don't need the value through somebody else's eyes, because somebody else is into them. They have a value for themselves. This is the Maral explains to us Ani Chashuv Kimes. This is the Misa of the Ani, and this is the Chiyus of the Mayan Chayim, the Chiyus of that which has water from Zich Alein. Its value for itself, not in the eyes, not because somebody sees it, not because somebody else says, from the person himself, the value. And this specifically a gullus, specifically when we lose a lot, the external things are lost. Specifically there, it's tested, and there's a value of the thing itself. So that's the first idea that I wanted to share in Parshas Vayetze. We have very little written from the Alter of Slobodka. L'maisa, there's one sefer the Talmidim wrote. He didn't write it himself. That was a question that Talmidim asked, that he didn't write it himself. We do have a sefer written from the Torah of the Alter of Slobodka. And there he says a davar nifla that I want to share with the Chevra. Yaakov Avinu, we know, goes to sleep. Yaakov vayishka b'makom ahi, after many years of not sleeping b'kfiyus, vayishka b'makom ahi, Yaakov Avinu goes to sleep. Vayishka b'makom ahu. When he wakes up, when Yaakov Avinu wakes up, vayir vayoyim anoyra makom azeh, ein zeh ki im beis alikim v'zeh shar shamayim. He's yored upon waking up from his dream that this is the makom of Ashras Hashchina. Ein zeh ki im beis alikim. And Vayir Vayoyim, he's afraid, says Rashi. V'noichi lo yadati, says Rashi. Achen yes Hashem mak mazav v'noichi lo yadati, says Rashi. Shem yadati. If I had known that this was the place of Ashras Hashchina, lo yashanti b'makom kadosh kazeh, I never would have slept in such a place. That's what Rashi says. Im yadati, if I would have known that this is a makom kadosh, lo yashanti b'makom kadosh kazeh, it's not derech eretz, and I wouldn't have slept in such a place. Lo yashanti b'makom kadosh kazeh. Erst the Alter of Slobodka, he expressed that Yaakov Avinu was Zeicha for the first Nevuah of his life. Tremendous Ruchniistic Madregas, he was Zeicha in this Maimon. He had a Nevuah, the first Nevuah, tremendous Ruchniistic Madregas. And he got big Besurais in this tremendous Chaloim, in this Nevuah, in this Mara. And the response is, he says, but if I would have known, I wouldn't have slept. Baruch Hashem, you slept here. Baruch Hashem, what's he expressing? Shem yadati lo yashanti. Said the Alter of Slobodka that he would have given up Ruchniistic Madregas, begeder derech eretz kadma l'Torah, and he said he would have given up Ruchniistic Madregas not to have a breach in derech eretz. And he would have given up Ruchniistic Madregas. It's not the derech eretz. There's a derech eretz. Not to sleep in a place, a makom kaddish, and Yaakov Avinu said that he would have given up Ruchniistic Madregas not to sleep in such a place. Now, I want to share. There's a mahalach in Ruchnius that I believe the Alter is saying. What's this? What's he telling us about? The Alter is the kasha and said it teretz. It's always a kasha. Could it be? Yeah, it is. The Alter was expressing something. What's happening here? He had tremendous Ruchniistic Madregas. He slept there and was Zeich in Nevuah. He said, if I would have known, I wouldn't have slept. What's the back and forth? He had tremendous Ruchnius. What's he teaching us? And by the way, it happened already. Don't cry, it was spilled. What's Yaakov Avinu expressing? Im yadati lo yashanti. What's he expressing? It was a tremendous, obviously ashkacha. He had tremendous ruchnius, and there's a ruchnius expressed, and it's Torah, that Yaakov Avinu announced something after. Im yadati lo yashanti. That's what he said. Anoichi lo yadati. Pirush. I didn't know. If I had known, and Yaakov taught this. Well, that's the Inyan here. He had a big Ruchniistic Madrega, and Beseder, teach that. Yaakov Avinu wakes up, he had big Ruchnius focus. It's true he shouldn't have slept. Ashkacha, he didn't know before. Beseder, no. He has to teach something. Im yadati lo yashanti. Yaakov Avinu teaches, and it's Torah lenetzach. Im yadati lo yashanti. Such a strange, sometimes somebody like misses the boat of something. Their reaction, that's your takeaway from this story. You just had a nevuah, you just had a neiredik amara. You just had an incredible experience, a life-changing nevuah, prophecy. Everything's different. And your takeaway is, if I would have known, I would. Yes, no, it's so funny to teach that here. It's a funny thing to teach here. And what's happening, and derech eretz is kadma l'Torah, and it could be, beseder, I don't know, the shaila, beforehand you can't do a breach in derech eretz. What's being taught here? Yadati lo yashanti. What's being taught here? You had a big nevuah. What's the response? Obviously, at some point you have to teach. It's not appropriate to sleep in a holy place. What's being taught after a ruchniistic experience? And I think this is what the Bali Musar, and I think in a profound way, I have found to myself that the world, I'm learning, I've gotten interested much more in the world of Hasidus. And I want to say, Reb David, and I spoke to friends about this. I spent most of my life more in the world of Musar. I'm learning the Sifrei Musar. And today I've gotten very tempted by Sifrei Hasidus. And I asked myself, is it very different? I find it to be very similar, to be honest. Very, remarkably similar. Remarkably. I'm not smart enough or accomplished enough in either to give big drushes on the differences. But I want to say an area that I find remarkably similar. And in the Sifrei Chasidus, this is like a yisai that I've seen over and over. And the Balei Musar, I believe, held the same thing. And I think this piece of the Alter of Slobodka is saying something very deep. Yaakov Avinu wakes up from the most spiritual moment of his life, the first nevuah, and he says, if I would have known that there's a Makom Kalish, I wouldn't have slept. That's the take. You're not supposed to sleep in a holy place. That's what's he saying. And what I want to say is like this, that everybody searches for Ruchnius. And of course, what Chaim is Chaim Avad is a life of Ruchnius, service of Hashem. What the Balei Musar and the Balei Chasidus taught us is actions matter a lot. Actions in our physical world matter. The actions of our physical world are full of meaning and purpose. And Yaakov Avinu taught, he had a naira of ruch, he had a manaira makam hazeh, it's a place of tremendous ruchnius. But he says, my physical actions are not all batal. Ilu yadati lo yashanti. It matters, my physical, I don't just acquire ruchnius separate from the Welt. I want to say at this moment of tremendous ruchnius, I want it to be clear. If I had known this was a holy place, I wouldn't have slept. My actions, my physical actions, to lie down or not to lie down. The physical decision, derech eretz kadma l'Torah, my actions, all the actions of my life matter. Where ruchnius is found and begins, all the nayradik amares, where they begin is in our physical actions. And ilu yadati lo yashanti, I wouldn't have lied down here. It's not okay, the physical, here you had a big, no. They understand that this whole spiritual mara is built on our physical deeds. And ilu yadati lo yashanti, I shouldn't have lied down. I want to make that clear, I shouldn't have lied down here. That is the focus in this whole mara, the physical action, to lie down or not to lie down, it matters. The physical activities of a human being, that of course, all the activities, we want them to be meaningful and important and al pi ratzon Hashem. But the derech eretz kadma l'Torah says our actions matter a lot. The actions of a human being. All the actions of the human being. We studied this when we read the journey of Eliezer Eved Avram. We read all the lessons that we learned, all the divrei halacha, every pasuk full of divrei halacha, we did together. We took a few psukim by Eliezer. He's going to feed his donkeys, and Netzach is tied, halachis and Torah in each action, because he was a shliach shel Hashem. And each physical action has importance and value in a person who's serving the Rabbeinu Shalom. And in teaching, this is the lesson that Yaakov, in a Mara Gadol that could be viewed as separate from life, Yaakov Avinu says, if I would have known, I wouldn't have slept in this place. All the ruchnius is tied to physical actions in this world. And Iliyadati, the Iker, my place of serving Hashem, is if I would have known this is a place of Kodesh, I wouldn't have slept here. That's my physical actions are where my mind's at, and all the ruchnius that comes out is built on the activities of the human being in this world. They matter and they're important. I've seen this in the world of Musar, I've seen this in the world of Chasidus. They probably have different ways of bringing this out, the importance of the activities of man. I have seen Torahs that I have seen panim chadashos that are foreign to me, that seem to discount the activities of man, that seem to make a human being, his marriage, his hanhaga with his wife, with his children, with the way he works. I have seen like a ruach acheres that both Musar and Chasidus would not subscribe to, would both be very frustrated with, a seemingly ignoring of derech eretz, of the anhaga, of the activities of man, that all the ruchnius is built there on the anhaga, on that derech eretz kadma l'Torah. The very Torah teaches the human being and instructs and is built on the human being's activities with sincerity, with the serious activities of a human being serving Hashem. And all the ruchnius is built on that. It doesn't discount that. It doesn't ignore that. It doesn't push away that. Derech eretz kadma l'Torah. So with the big madregas that he saw, it's like wild. He has an nevuah and he's handling if he should have slept here. In the nevuah, shouldn't that make it irrelevant where you sleep? Shouldn't nevuah say that you don't even matter? Shouldn't such a ruchnius thing be that? No. All this ruchnius, all these madregas are built on the activities, come from and are brought out. Derech eretz kadma l'Torah. It's brought out by the activities. Our activities count and matter and should be done with dignity, and it should matter what the person does. So to wake up from a chalaim, from the first nevuah, and to handle, should I have slept here or not? That's the handle. Ilu yadati lo yashanti. Comes out of this ruchnius madreg. He says, I want it to be known. And he teaches us, Ilu yadati lo yashanti. If I had known, I would not have slept here. There's a very famous, people know it, the Reb Moshe, very, very famous Reb Moshe on Parshas Vayetze. I want to end it. I want to quote it from the Shloah Kodesh. Reb Moshe, I want to say it's Mechavin. Reb Moshe says it in his own way. It's a Shloah Kodesh. So I want to quote the Shloah Kodesh. It's very remarkable to me that when Yaakov Avinu tells Rachel and Leah, you notice that, Reb Ezi? It's a Shloah Kodesh. Yeah. When Yaakov Avinu tells Rachel and Leah, and he says that it's time to leave. He said it from the Shloah Kodesh. Oh. So he says, "Vayishlach Yaakov Yikol Rachel Leah Sad El Tzaynai." Yaakov Avinu calls Rachel and Leah to the tzayin. I'm always fascinated that he speaks to them by the tzayin. I'm a very visual learner, and he's next to the tzayin. The pashtus of the pasuk is that it was the honesty of Yaakov Avinu. He's in the middle of working. He doesn't abandon the tzayin. He's a hired man. So he's talking to them by the tzayin. Chazal tell us a secret. Chazal say a rule, that the walls have ears. If you want to say a secret, don't do it indoors. You have to go to the Sada. The Chazal say Yaakov calls and Rachel Hasad El Tzaynai. He didn't push it. The Tzayin aren't going to give over your secrets. So he calls Rachel Leah to the Tzayin. It was a secretive meeting. That's why he went to the Sada. It's not a good idea to say this news in the tzibur. That's why he went to the Sada. Nonetheless, he tells them. He says that your father, and he says that I see your father looks really like he's not happy with me, and it's not good to be here anymore. And this is how he breaks the news. This is how he breaks the news that it's time to leave. Let's go back to Eretz Yisrael. And the Shloah Kodesh asked, the Rebbeinu Shalom said to leave. It's an open pasuk. Go. So what's he breaking the news to the imais? It's not good to be here anymore. It has nothing to do if it's good or bad to be here. Hashem said to leave. So what does he tell the imais? That it's not good to be here. Hashem said to leave. Rachel and Leah's response, and Reb Moshe had pointed this out famously. Rachel and Leah respond. They say, "Yeah, you think we had any future here? We're like foreigners, Tim. We have no future here." Huh? What's this back and forth? Yaakov says it's wonderful. We should leave. Rachel and Leah speak out that Kenachriya. What's the discussion? The Rebbeinu Shalom is mitzvah. The Shloah Kodesh teaches us something in Avodas Hashem. I think it's a Yesod Gadol in Avodas Hashem. Don't be a martyr. Understand that the Rebbeinu Shalom Sivuyim Alutayvayseinu. It's very, very lousy, a martyr Yiddishkeit. Oh, woe unto me. I always have a visual. It's very funny to me. People will say to a Rebbe in Waterbury, they'll say, "Oh, I'm Mekani Roilam Abba." What are they really saying? Nebucha Yoilam Hazeh. You're a martyr. I always think that when I'm in the middle of a good volleyball tournament. I always think, I'm just laughing, jokes on you. He's Mekani, like, it's doch geschmack. You're in the middle of a solid volleyball. You're schmoozing with a bacher, having a wonderful time. Whenever having like a crazy good time, I always think of the line, I'm Mekani, but what are you talking about? Guys ask me on shidduchim. Guys know, some guys, if you want to make trouble, if a bacher wants to make trouble, how do I know she's going to be meiser nefesh for my Torah? What's wrong? The guy has such a low esteem, like she's going to suffer from you. Maybe she won't suffer from you. Maybe you'll give her a good gewaldige life. But you're coming in an attitude like she's going to be Zaychet, have a beautiful, happy, amazing life. What's your question? Is she going to be normal to appreciate a great life? Most people appreciate a great life. The Shloah Kodesh teaches us that this is how a person, not because to pretend, it's not a shtick, The Avos and the Imais, the derech of Hashem was mitzaveh, they saw in the tzivui, the glick, they saw the good mazel in the tzivui Hashem. And they found how it was gewaldig, it's a style of avodas Hashem. I have seen people, I've watched it, Ramesha spoke about it, people who don't know the Shla Kaddish. You could hear people use a lot of words of martyrdom. Ramesha alluded, people say, Ramesha made fun of the expression, Shver zu sein Yid. Oh, it's so difficult to be. I have heard people that their Yiddishkeit, you can hear them talk, is full of words of martyrdom. It's not a truth. It's not a truth. L'tayv lanu, the mitzvahs, the Torah is l'tayv lanu, and the Shla Kaddish says this is a Yid's attitude to Ratzon Hashem. So when Yaakov Avinu says over, he's studying the tzivui of Hashem. That's how he spoke to the Imai, says the Shla Kaddish. The Rebbeinu Shalom said, leave. So he says, I found it, I understand. And he gave the tzivui with all the cheshek and chiyus. I noticed that Lovin doesn't like us anymore. Geshmak. I mamish understand. Hashem's mamish. He's sending us as geshmak. And Vatan Ruach Levi. So we mamish understand. We mamish understand it. This is the oif in how a Yid serves Hashem. It's not just l'shaynis, it's attitudes and it's a truth. It's not a trick. It's a truth. Of course, the Rebbeinu Shalom is mitzvah. The Rebbeinu Shalom who loves us is mitzvah l'toivaseinu. So the derech of avodas Hashem is to see the chesed. It's to constantly look and find the chesed. So when the obviously Imai spoke about Gzeirus Hashem, says the Shla Kaddish. Yaakov spoke about how good it was, and they responded. We talk to see that also Geshmak, and together in the Geshmak Eifen, they did Ratzon Hashem. Famously, Reb Moshe blamed that people's children went off the derech, and he blamed an attitude of a shver zu sein Yid, of people who had a different type of attitude, a very martyrdom type of attitude of Yiddishkeit, which is incorrect, tremendously incorrect. The Rebbeinu Shalom's l'tayvaseinu, and this Shla Kaddish is not like a vart. It's not a cute. It's a derech hachayim. A derech hachayim, and an understanding that's emes, that the tzivuyim is a tremendous taiva, the tzivuyim of Hashem. It was interesting. I told the Chevra recently, I met somebody who by nature is very, very disciplined, and they were telling me how much they like davening, that it gives so much structure to their day, and they were like fired up by the rigidity, by the organization of minyan. And they were like very fired up by 3 minyanim a day, and they came from the perspective, the person by their nature is a very organized. Minyanim, they just felt, gives them such a structure. And it was so interesting to me that minyanim excite me, the social aspect. I come here, it's such a mechaya to see friends, and we're all running our lives. Like when we make a minyan Sunday morning, we have a minyan together, and we see it's just so delightful when we could come together. And everybody has their aspect, how the tzivui Hashem is so encouraging and so exciting for the mensch, but that's what you're supposed to do. You see in the tzivui of Hashem so much chiyus and cheshek the person finds in the tzivui Hashem. The Shla Kaddish says this is the oifen of serving Hashem. That's what Reb Moshe taught, the famous word, Reb Moshe knocked a shver zu sein Yid type of attitude. You could hear it in people. It's not our. We don't talk Yiddish, so you don't hear people say shver zu sein Yid. People have in their Yiddishkeit, if they're honest, and I've seen people have a very martyrdom type Yiddishkeit. It's not an emes. It's not an emes like you give. It's not an emes. The Rebbeinu Shalom is mitzavas l'toivaseinu, for our benefit, and the emes is the Shla Kaddish, is a person finding and seeing and appreciating in the mitzvahs of Hashem, each one in their own oifen, in their own way. It's fascinating that Rachel and Leah do it, and Yaakov, that each one sees in their own situation. The Torah saying, me and my friend both went to minyan, and what he likes about minyan is not the nekuda that excites me. What excites me, he might be more of it, of a guy who's not so extroverted. So for him, that we each get excited by a different aspect, but minyan speaks to both. And the avoid of a person finding the tremendous fortune, that we're fortunate to find in avodas Hashem, the approach to avodas Hashem, each of our missions in avodas Hashem, to see the tremendous rewards and positivity and the toiv lanu that Hashem is giving us in all the mitzvahs Hashem. A guten Shabbos Kodesh.